Edward Kilbride, my uncle, was a vibrant man. Ask those who knew him, and they would describe him as tenacious, ambitious, and above all, creative. He was simultaneously the same as and entirely unique from other creatives. In his younger years, he was the frontman of a rock and roll band, one that was ready to take on the world. That band was ecstatic with the kind of energy you can only find in youth. Headstrong and ambitious, they truly encapsulated the name in which they donned, the Warp Factor. I'm gone away. It was 1966, or maybe 67, when Larry Chalmers and his brother Kenny were looking for some guys to start up a band. They couldn't have been older than 16 or 17 at the time, and, well, I'll let Larry tell you how that went.
He instantly joined our band. He came in and sang one song, we go, okay, we're in. And then that became the Warp Factor.
Ed had his friend drive him to the audition. Microphone and cord hanging around his neck, and according to Larry, things were pretty instant from there. Back in the 60s, the music scene was a bit different than today. Local bands found their lifeblood in community halls, dances that would go late into the night. In this environment, cover bands flourished, playing all the rock and roll hits that everybody loved. Edmonton in particular had a strong local music scene, with all these bands playing and gigging, hoping to make it big and make this their lives. And that was the goal for many of these bands, including the Warp Factor. They wanted to make music their lives, and they tried. They worked hard to find success, and locally they did. They became big in the scene, made the right connections, and managed a few high-profile gigs. Back then, big bands didn't have touring openers. Instead, they had local bands open for them. Because of this facet of music culture, Warp Factor were able to play a few really big shows, opening for The Who in late 1967 and Cream in '68. Warp Factor was around for another year or so after that, but unfortunately, they ended up going their separate ways. Bands back then didn't last too long, and I guess bands today don't either. Gigging musicians would move from one project to the next, trying to find their big break, or, after a while, end up settling into day jobs. Warp Factor ended on good terms, with Ed and Larry playing together again in other groups later on. They were lifelong friends, connected over their love of music. Warp Factor would play together one more time in 1989 on New Year's Eve. The night was filled with Edmonton bands from the 60s all coming together for one big reunion. Warp Factor ended up playing at about 2 a.m., and they spent most of their time reminiscing about the older days, and once again felt that artful connection through music. Larry said that it wasn't too hard getting back into the groove of things either.
I remember Ed saying, okay, I'll go out there and I'll sing the songs, but I'm not talking. I'm just going to go sing the songs, no talking. We got out there. If you listen carefully to the tape, you'll hear Bob Walker saying to Ed, shut up. Just sing. Ed got going. He was back to his old frontman self.
Ed always left an impression. It was his way. Be it through his art or his friendship, he made lasting connections to the people that were lucky enough to know him, and those connections run deep through the heart of even the city itself. His final career may not have been music, but he still shared his voice with everyone he knew. Even when he wasn't singing, he brought music to the room. The Warp Factor may be gone, but the idea they represent lives on in all those who pursue their passions and make their lives the greatest realities they can. The name Warp Factor was inspired by this little new television program called Star Trek. That show, to me at least, evokes the very best humanity can be. Maybe I'm just sentimental, but the legacy of such a thing really weighs on me. To me, it seems as though the Warp Factor were inspired by that feeling, even if they didn't realize it. Inspired by optimism, a brighter tomorrow. Those feelings, those concepts create a better, more connected world. And that's the amazing thing about music. That was, and still is, the amazing thing about Ed.
Like a little girl. Bob Dylan. Good times. Good times. Thank you.